Chapter 6. Henry. Emily knew that the sock had blown off the clothesline into the brook. That's the only thing that could have happened. When spring had come in earnest and the brook had gone down, she had walked its length far beyond the culvert to where the brook joined the river, almost a mile through the woods, hoping to find it. But she had not. She had resigned herself to the understanding that the sock was gone. Now, as fall loomed, she brought the question to Henry. Henry, what do you want to do with this old sock? I don't think its partner's going to show up. You think we should throw it away already? She asked. Well, Henry said, I suppose I can't blame the other one for running off. After all, being on my foot in them boots would certainly be something I'd never want to endure. Myself, I mean. Emily chuckled. Oh, Henry, you're such a card. Let's keep the one that stayed in thanks for its loyalty. Since I can't use it for a sock alone, I can give it lighter duty. How about I use it to cover the muzzle of my shotgun this duck season? Henry said. How's that sound to you, Emily? said to the single sock, talking to it as if it understood. Emily couldn't have known, but the sock did understand, and replied that it would love to cover the muzzle for duck season, for this sock, in the months it had spent in the orphan sock box, also had felt the pangs of uselessness. Of course, its voice was inaudible to human ears. So the sock that had stayed behind had a new assignment in life. What would it be like to cover the muzzle of a shotgun? Sounds like a good job for a sock. Fresh air, out in the open. I can see the world around me, not just try to imagine it from inside a boot. I think a new day has dawned in my life, the sock said. Henry took the sock over to the gun cabinet. He opened the top drawer where he kept the cleaning kit, boxes of shells, and other hunting supplies. He laid the sock carefully over a bag of cleaning patches and slid the drawer shut again. These other items in the drawer were unfamiliar to the sock. There was an interesting smell. It wasn't the smell of gasoline or two-cycle oil familiar from Henry's work. There was the unmistakable aroma of all things, wintergreen. It was a nice smell. The cleaning patches spoke up, having detected the sock's surprise at the aroma. That's the boar butter, the patches said, many speaking at once, but all saying exactly the same thing. Boar butter? What's that? The sock inquired. It's a kind of gun cleaning grease, said a shotgun shell. I can speak for myself, thank you, the boar butter said, not happy to be called grease. I actually contain no grease, no petroleum grease, that is. I'm used as a lubricant in black powder firearms and as a rust preventative on any firearms. Well, I hope you won't be offended by a compliment on your fine aroma from an old sock, said the sock. Happy to hear it from anyone, said the boar butter, adding, for a sock, you're not so bad yourself on that account. Yeah, well, I've been out of work since spring. My partner left, couldn't stand Henry's feet. I was afraid I'd be thrown out. All I can say is thanks to my lucky stars for the sentimentality of Henry, said the sock, enjoying the opportunity for conversation. Of all the seasons of New England, Henry most loved fall. He looked forward to hunting season. He joked that it was all for the purpose of restocking his fly tying kit. In August, he'd gone to the pharmacy downtown to get his migratory waterfowl permit. In September, he'd hunted Canada geese. But he most looked forward to wood duck season, starting in October. Wood ducks are small, but their coloring is as exotic as any bird Henry had ever seen. and because they eat mostly acorns and seeds and some insects, their meat is very tasty, not fishy like some ducks can be. Thoughts of wood ducks filled Henry's mind as he took out the shotgun for cleaning. He opened the drawer and saw the sock resting neatly in its place. His thoughts turned to Emily, to the morning of his birthday that time, the pancakes, bacon, maple syrup. "I've got an idea, old sock," he said. "I'm going to sew a little tie string onto you so you don't slide off the barrel." He took a needle out of his wallet and thread from his fly tying kit and clipped a section of old shoelace. He stitched the shoelace at its middle to about an inch down from the top of the sock. "That'll do nicely," he muttered as he imagined himself untying the lace and slipping off the sock just in time to lead an incoming wood duck. While Henry prepared his equipment for hunting season, Emily pared apples in the kitchen. Their home had once been a farmhouse, and the land had several old apple trees on it. This year had been particularly bountiful. Emily and Henry had picked most of the early ones, mostly McIntosh, Gravenstein, and some others whose variety they did not know. She'd put up applesauce already. This day she would make as many apple pies as she and Henry could eat for the week. Every Saturday afternoon she would do the same thing until the bounty of apples ran out. This year she figured she might be making pies in January. She pared the apples, made dough for the crusts, rolled it out, lined 6 pie pans, filled them with the mix of cut-up apples, sprinkled with flour, cinnamon, a little sugar, a little lemon juice, and a little melted butter. She rolled out dough to cover them, pinched the edges shut with the tines of a fork, put them in the oven 2 at a time. The house filled with a heavenly aroma that drifted to Henry, distracting him from his gun-cleaning work. September goose season came and went, and Henry had gone hunting 3 Sundays that month. He had used the loyal sock to cover the muzzle of his shotgun, and it had worked very well. But Henry had not been able to shoot a goose. He'd not had a good shot at one. They'd always been just too far off. One clear, cool October Sunday, the first Sunday of wood duck season, Henry loaded the canoe onto the pickup and drove out to Fairley Marsh. Fairley Marsh was a good place to find wood ducks. It was a wide, shallow pond formed by a concrete dam on what had once been a small stream. Up from the main pond, a series of beaver ponds stretched one after another up the valley like terraced rice fields. The mirror-like water of the beaver ponds was punctuated by the sun-bleached trunks of trees killed by the flooding, trees whose state of decay indicated the age of the pond. To Henry's eye, it appeared that the beavers had put up the first dam around 20 years ago. The bark on the trees was long gone, and the bare wood had taken on a silvery sheen. The unmistakable rectangular nesting holes, first made by pileated woodpeckers, had since been taken over by wood ducks. Henry knew the succession of events in the life of a beaver pond. A 3-year-old male beaver leaves his parents' home and searches for a suitable spot for his own dam. He requires a watercourse, suitable topography, and an abundance of poplar trees, whose bark is the beaver's favorite food. If not poplars, willows will do. When he finds these conditions, he begins construction on his new dam. In the course of his work, he will be joined by a female beaver who has set out from her home looking for a prospective mate. At Fairley Marsh, each successive beaver dam upstream looked to be about 5 years younger than the one before it, judging by the condition of the dead trees, and what birds inhabited the woodpecker holes. That fit into Henry's understanding, as he also knew that beavers usually have their first litter of kits 2 or 3 years after they build a new dam. As long as the conditions upstream are favorable, each generation would make a new dam immediately upstream from their parents' dam. Why wouldn't they? He muttered to himself. Henry wondered how many of these beaver 5-year plans would ultimately be up this valley. He realized that so far there were 4 dams in this series. This gave him confidence that his figuring of the ages of the dams was accurate. He unloaded the canoe and carried it to the water, went back to the truck for his shotgun and hunting bag with his thermos and apple pie. He loaded his things in the canoe, got in, and paddled toward the beaver ponds. His thoughts continued. He knew that young beaver couples would complete a dam within a month, and the new pond would grow, flooding the forest, changing the landscape. He muttered while he paddled the canoe. If that female beaver never showed up, do you think that male beaver would bother to finish the dam on his own? His thoughts continued. Once the dam is completed, all inundated trees would die the following spring. Softwoods would die quickly, but hardwoods would leaf out, only to have the leaves shrivel and fall off by summer. Insects would invade all the standing dead trees. Woodpeckers would be attracted by the insects and would excavate the trees to eat the insects and also to build nests the following spring. Pileated woodpeckers, common in New Hampshire, would use their nesting holes for just one season. Then the holes would be taken over by other birds, especially wood ducks, the only ducks that nest in trees. These were the thoughts on Henry's mind as he landed the canoe at the base of the first beaver dam. He walked to the crest of the dam, careful not to fall and not to damage the miraculous work of the beavers, and crept silently to the end, where a tuft of speckled alder would conceal him in a natural duck blind. He readied himself for the hunt. He loaded 3 shells into the 16-gauge shotgun, set its stock on the dam, untied the lace, and slipped the sock off the muzzle. He stole a moment to look at the sock and let his mind wander, then placed it in his green canvas hunting bag. He felt for the thermos, found it, and poured himself a cup of coffee. Deep yellow sunshine of Indian summer shone on the red leaves of silver maple and swamp white oak that fringed the pond. The glorious image reflected almost perfectly on the still water. Henry savored his coffee, letting the steam rise up to warm his face. He heard the far-off sputtering of a woodpecker, its vibrating sound echoing through the forest. Henry hunted alone and didn't have a dog. If he shot a duck, he would pull the canoe up over the dam and canoe out to retrieve the bird himself. It was his custom, when hunting, to first sit quietly in a discreet place and watch and listen to his surroundings. This day, far across the pond, a V-shaped ripple spread slowly on the water, making the reflected trees slowly dance. It was a beaver. Henry knew to be quiet so as not to spook it, for if the beaver detected a human, it would immediately slap its tail on the water, making a loud warning to all wildlife that a predator lurked. Henry knew that ducks would also heed the beaver's warning. Henry watched as the beaver slipped silently under the surface. He tried to imagine where it would rise again and what it was doing under the water. The dance of the reflected forest calmed, and in the expanse of mirrored sky Henry spied the quick dark streak of a wood duck flying past, whistling its flying song. Henry looked up, too far off for a shot. The beaver emerged on the far side of the pond and glided toward the upper dam. Henry watched the beaver, well camouflaged in its slick oily fur, pull a submerged sapling out of the water, then gnaw it into pieces for its dam. The coffee was good. At home, Henry took his coffee with milk, but he always had it black when he used the thermos. In the woods, either hunting, fishing, or logging, the uncut bitterness of the coffee was refreshing to Henry. He drained the cup, put it away, and crouched under the alder thicket to hunt. Wood ducks have two songs, a whistling song for flying and a chirping song for swimming. When they frolic in play on the water, they make another less musical sound akin to a cat's purring. Henry had fashioned a small wooden instrument for imitating these sounds. He would wait until he heard the flying song and would play the swimming song and occasionally the purring sound, hoping to draw the duck near enough to shoot. Sometimes he would play the songs even if he didn't hear a flying duck. Then it happened. He heard the flying song. He played the swimming song, and the flying duck indeed did respond, altering its course toward Henry. Henry readied his shotgun and continued the song, holding the instrument between his teeth. The flying duck approached head on. Henry drew a bead. It flew straight in, no need to lead. He could see it was a drake by the rust-colored chest. Then he saw the iridescent green of the head. Then even the glint of the red eye, just a little closer. "Don't shoot till you see the reds of their eyes," Henry silently said to himself. He began to squeeze the trigger, slowly, lightly, keeping his eye on the bird. But then, in the blink of an eye, the bird veered off out of range. Henry would not get that one this day, nor any of the other wood ducks he saw this first Sunday of duck hunting. In fact, for all his love of the woods, his deep understanding of the workings of the natural world, his self-proclaimed love of hunting, his appreciation of the preserved skins his friends had given him as contributions to his fly-tying kit, Henry had actually never shot anything while hunting. It was for this reason that he now hunted alone. As the sun slipped into the forest behind him, and only filtered amber light illuminated the far shore, Henry decided to call it a day. He picked up his things and walked out from the cover of the alder onto the crest of the dam. He set his shotgun down on a tuft of grass growing among the bleached, peeled logs, and he sat. He reached into his bag for the sock, and then for the apple pie. He drained the remaining coffee into the thermos cup, unwrapped the slice of pie, and beheld this moment of beauty. The beauty of the place, the autumn foliage, the clear sky, the chill air which promised to frost the landscape as soon as sunset would close the day. The coffee still steamed. Here's the picture that goes with that. See, there's Henry. The apple pie and the red sock, like a locket with a picture inside, these two items were reminders to Henry of a beauty more profound than any that can be seen. They were reminders of the love he and Emily shared. They would fill him with joy in any surroundings. He stopped his thoughts and closed his eyes so as not to be swept away by emotion. When that wave had passed, he took the sock, leaned his shotgun into the crook of a branch protruding from the dam, and slipped the sock over the muzzle. He sat up and looked back at the slice of pie. He unwrapped it and began to eat. As good pie as it was, his enjoyment of it was unrelated to its physical quality. Henry finished the pie, loaded his things into the canoe, and paddled back across the main pond to the concrete dam to where the truck was parked. But lost in his thoughts, he had neglected to tie the string to secure the red sock to the muzzle of the shotgun. And as it happened, he had walked to the canoe with the shotgun over his shoulder in the manner of a soldier. Henry had not noticed that when scrambling down to the canoe, the sock had been snagged on a branch of the alder thicket and had slipped off the muzzle. He'd set the shotgun behind him in the stern of the canoe and had not noticed that the sock was gone. His thoughts were far away while he paddled back to the car. He was piecing together the facts that beaver ponds are abandoned after the best food trees, poplars and willows, have all been eaten, and that the lifespan of the ponds varies greatly, with some lasting just 20 years or so, while others can last 100 years or more. There in the canoe, Henry noted that after a pond is abandoned, the following spring's rush of snowmelt washes out the dam, and what had been the muck bottom of the pond becomes a plain of rich soil, ready to receive wind-blown seeds of terrestrial plants, and that poplars disperse their seeds on the wind in tiny white puffs able to travel miles. That is why they are among the first of the pioneer species to inhabit open land. And no land is as open as that of a freshly abandoned beaver pond, he said aloud. So Henry pointed out to himself when he walks in a poplar grove, it is often in a valley of flat bottom land with deep, rich soil, and there is almost always a small stream wending through the grove. He figured that it is likely that there had been beaver ponds on those sites before, probably just a little before the oldest trees of the poplar grove had begun their lives. Then from the canoe, he looked around to the low granite hills that hemmed the valley, worn round from geological time. He imagined how the glaciers had carved out the valley, how just 10 or 12,000 years before, the entire landscape must have been a deep, barren rock canyon. Seeds must have lodged in cracks in the rock, sprouted and struggled to survive, cleaving to the rock for phosphorus and potassium, relying on lightning strikes to produce momentary mists of nitrogen-rich rain. And in the wood of those early trees accumulated the organic basis for soil. They grew and died, and their spirit leached into the next generation of plants, every season more and more accumulating until a thin mat of soil supported a forest. Then the beavers must have come for the first time, and when they did, the process must have accelerated, because Henry had noticed that the muck bottom of beaver ponds accumulates much faster than soil grows on the forest floor. Each cycle of a beaver dam living out its life would add 3 or 4 feet of soil, compared to scant inches on dry land. How many times has that cycle repeated itself through time? How many hundreds of feet am I now above the bedrock of this valley, here in my canoe? Henry said to himself. Emily stood in the living room of their home, knitting, looking out the picture window to the mountain on this same Indian summer evening, waiting for Henry to return. Light the color of sherry bathed the landscape, coloring tawny the maples, oaks, balsam fir, spruce, and pines showed. Balsam fir, spruce, and pines showed like dark brush strokes on this painterly scene. Beeches still holding their bleached leaves, while white birch trunks provided twisted light strokes like lightning bolts. The last of the day's sunlight always painted a new picture for Emily, and she made a point of seeing it every evening. She had prepared dinner: roast pork with rosemary, potatoes, parsnips, carrots, all browned in the meat drippings. A pleasing and soporific aroma filled the house. In her hands, knitting needles moved with rhythmic grace, silently producing a mitten from thick wool yarn, whose skein rested in a pocket on the front of the apron she had made expressly for the purpose. Emily knitted as others might smoke, the movements for each stitch having become reflexive, muscle knowledge. She could knit unconsciously. Her hands so employed, Emily let her thoughts travel untethered while she stared out at the changing light. "Oh, Henry, what are we going to do with you, you sweet, gentle man?" she said to herself. She tried to imagine where Henry was at that moment. She imagined him canoeing across the pond, having quit hunting for the day, just about to reach the landing area near the concrete dam. She could not know it, but she was right. That is exactly where he was. She'd noticed that in recent years he preferred to go hunting alone. She knew it was not recommended to hunt alone. Heaven forbid. But she let him go. She also noticed his growing attachment to things that would remind him of her love for him. How his face had lit up when he'd seen the apple pie in his lunch, and his resolve to find another purpose for the lone red sock, not to throw it away. She'd knitted dozens of socks, sweaters, mittens, hats, and all manner of other things for him over the years. But those socks were the first things she'd knitted for him. It was understandable that he'd want to keep them, she rationalized to herself. "I suppose," she muttered to the mountain. She imagined him driving up Bog Road, that he would be home shortly. Again, she was exactly right. She broke her trance and went to greet Henry when he would arrive. Just as she'd got her boots on and walked out the mudroom door to the driveway, Henry's pickup came into view at the bottom of the hill. She waved to him before the truck disappeared around the house to emerge on the other side, and she walked out to help him put the canoe away. He parked and got out. "Did you get anything?" Emily asked. "I got a number of fine wood ducks," Henry answered. "And that number is?" Emily asked. "Well, actually, I'm not at liberty to give specifics. You know how it is," Henry said. 0 is a number. "Got it. You hungry?" Emily said. She had grown used to this joke of Henry's. He'd shot no ducks, and that was okay. That's the end of chapter 6.